What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to this week's installment of The Lake Show. Now, we're going to switch it up this week. I know I'm all about the inspirational, motivational content, and I know that I pride myself on being able to help everyone, but through it all, through all the stress, through all the struggle, it's a good thing. It's a good reminder to sit back a little bit and just enjoy life a little bit, So today we're going to do something a little bit different. As many of my viewers know, I am a big-time advocate for football. I'm one of the biggest fans of the sport in general, and we just had the Lions in Kansas City last night. Well, 2 nights ago, because this will be posted on Saturday, of course. But, today I wanted to reel it in a little bit from, deep thoughts and deep talks with other people. And today you just got me, but I'm going to catch some heat for this, as a bunch of people are going to judge my picks, of course, but excuse me, we're going to go over all of week one's matchups in the NFL. And at the end of this video, I'll give you my 2 cents on 5 teams from the AFC and NFC that I think can honestly make a run through the playoffs and into the Super Bowl. So without further ado, let's get started. So obviously, Thursday night, we had Detroit and we had Kansas City, and Detroit won 21-20. Now, I watched this whole game. It was boring as shit, as a lot of people would probably think. Jared Goff, once again, is the most underrated quarterback in this entire league. Everyone dogs on the man. I have no idea why. I get it. He struggled mightily with the Rams, other than that one Super Bowl year. But I attribute that to good coaching. If you remember, Jeff Fisher was the head coach of the Rams for years and years and years. But, honestly, has he ever had a winning season? I honestly don't know. And Jeff Fisher has never proven himself to be a winner. And now with Sean McVay, obviously that turned him around a little bit. Now, I'm still a supporter of Matthew Stafford being traded for Jared Goff from the Rams. Obviously, that got the Rams a Super Bowl. But I think that Jared Goff is dogged on too much. Literally, he's more than capable of carrying a team, I would say. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think Detroit's gonna end up making the Super Bowl. Maybe. At the end of the video, I'll explain all my reasonings behind why I think certain teams can make the Super Bowl and make a deep run. However, this Detroit Lions team is not like the Lions of old. I mean, throughout my entire 23 years of living on this earth, the Lions have been the biggest punching bag in the league, other than Cleveland and other than Washington, basically throughout my life. Detroit has been a shit show, bona fide shit show. And obviously going into Kansas City, the reveal of the Super Bowl banner, God, Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs cost me so much fucking money during the Super Bowl last year. I predicted the final score on FanDuel. I think it was a $10 bet to win $5,000 or something like that. I tried to predict the final score. I got the score right, but it was flipped. Of course, the Chiefs won. I forget the final score, but I do remember I picked the correct score, so feel free to fill me in on what that final score was. Honestly, I don't care enough just because I lost so much money. Otherwise, I'd probably know if it went the other way. But moral of the story, I literally picked the Eagles to win by a certain amount, and I predicted the Chiefs to have a certain amount, and of course, the score was flipped. So I won nothing, and I'm still pissed about it to this day. So after all that, back to the game. So I think the Kansas City has a problem. While their defense played good, obviously not good enough to get them the win, the biggest issue with this team is not having Chris Jones on that team. Now, I am an advocate for paying players just because they, depending on what position they are, obviously they add tremendous value to the team. The Lions didn't run as much. They didn't rush for as many yards as I thought they would against the Chiefs. However, that's still one of the stoutest O-lines in the league, and I think they proved that. But I also think it's mightily important that Kansas City gets a deal done with Chris Jones. This has to be top priority for them, because if Detroit's going to run all over them, and towards the end of that game, if everyone watched, they shoved that ball down their throats. David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs from Detroit, they had their way towards the end of that game. So if I'm Kansas City, I'm nervous. I am genuinely concerned. So do you pay him as much as Aaron Donald? I don't think you do. Do you pay him as much as Quinnen Williams? I don't think he's as good as Quinnen Williams from the Jets. He sure as hell isn't as good as TJ Watt from the Steelers. So, but at the same time, he is fantastic at what he does for his position. Definitely the second or third, you can make that argument between Quinnen Williams and Chris Jones as the best, second best behind Aaron Donald, defensive tackle in the entire NFL. So if you think about it, Detroit, to me, they had no business, honestly, going into Kansas City and beating the Chiefs. But then again, Jared Goff is now 2-0 and outdueled Mahomes for a second time. But another thing, Kansas City's receivers, wow. I mean, good Lord. I can't catch the ball, but Lord, I can catch better than the Chiefs did that night. They have hands of steel. They could not catch the ball whatsoever and help out Mahomes. So, obviously, it was a fun watch. I mean, kind of boring, but it was fun for me because finally the NFL is back. Obviously, college football is in full swing. If you guys want, leave some comments down below. Maybe I'll do a college football prediction video. But yeah, my biggest takeaway is that the Detroit Lions are not the Lions of before, and the Chiefs, they need Chris Jones back badly, and they need probably by the trade deadline to invest in a quality number one receiver because that's concerning. All right, so we got that game out of the way. So now let's move on to Carolina at the Atlanta Falcons. Bryce Young, the first overall pick for Carolina going into Atlanta. I think this game is going to be a shit show between two, honestly, bottom 10 teams in the league. I'm not entirely sure what to make of Carolina. I mean, I don't even know who they got on offense anymore because DJ Moore's now with Chicago. But Bryce Young, you got to play your rookie quarterbacks. You got to get them reps. You got to get them ready for game time. So I think Bryce Young, I don't think he wins. I don't think he's nearly as good as a lot of people think. I think he's very undersized for what he is as a quarterback. But, going into Atlanta, I don't see Carolina being able to pull this out. Now, Atlanta has their issues, but at least they have some weapons on offense. Cordarrelle Patterson, Bijan Robinson, Drake London. Obviously, everything depends on Desmond Ridder for Atlanta, because if you look at the next draft for quarterbacks, now the league has shifted dramatically towards offense. There's no doubt about that. But the problem is owners are getting very impatient because they see guys come into the league year one and they're stout. Like Pat Mahomes was a stud. Obviously, he had a year behind Alex Smith, but the first year he completely started a full game, MVP, 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns. That spoke for itself. But Justin Herbert, you looked at his first game, you can obviously see the it factor. Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, all these guys coming in year one prove that they belong in the NFL and that they can carry a franchise. So I honestly don't think teams are in the mood for waiting around anymore. They want results now, and now. They need to know if you can play or not. Probably I'd say by Thanksgiving, we'll really know how good Desmond Ridder is. Honestly, you could probably tell that after week 5. But for Atlanta, I think Atlanta ends up beating Carolina this week just because they have better weapons on offense. Like I said, I can't even name you one of the Carolina Panthers' main weapons. Meanwhile, obviously Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Desmond Ridder, he can run around. I mean, I watched him play against Alabama in the college football playoff years ago. That Cincinnati team gave him everything they had. That game was a lot closer than the final score suggested. But do I think Desmond Ridder is a great quarterback? No. But do I think he can be serviceable? Yeah. So eventually we'll see. But as far as week 1 goes, I definitely think Carolina cannot just match up with Atlanta's firepower on offense. So I'm going to go take the Falcons in this game. Next up, Cincinnati at Cleveland. Oh, I'm going to get some heat for this one because I got friends for fans of both of these teams. Oh, man. Zupko, I hate to do it to you. Will, your team's going to take this one. I'm going to take Cincinnati at Cleveland, specifically because we do not know, honestly, how good Deshaun Watson's going to be. Obviously, he's had his lawsuit issues, and he missed almost 2 years of football, dealing with everything. So, Cleveland's team on paper looks fantastic. Nick Chubb, David Njoku. I'm trying to think of everyone else. It's kind of losing. I don't know why I draw a blank when it comes to the roster, but I'm gonna look that up just because I feel like an idiot. Oh yeah, Amari Cooper, Marquise Goodwin, Elijah Moore, Donovan Peoples-Jones, obviously Myles Garrett, got Denzel Ward. It's honestly a stacked team on paper. And Zadarius Smith. I completely forgot that they added him in the offseason. So, we'll see. Grant Delpit. The Browns look great on paper, but is it going to be enough to propel them throughout this entire season? I honestly feel bad for Browns fans because they had to deal with so much BS for years and years and years on end. I don't know. I don't think I just don't trust Cleveland. Other than that one good year with Baker Mayfield that they went into Pittsburgh and beat them. COVID year, no fans in the stands. I'm thoroughly convinced that made a difference. I don't know. I gave Cleveland their props. They whooped our asses up and down that field. Mine meaning Pittsburgh. You can tell, obviously. But I don't know. I just don't trust Cleveland too much this year. But they've had Cincinnati's number. They have had their number. I don't think Joe Burrow has beaten Cleveland in the regular season. Well, I don't think they played in the postseason. No, I don't believe Joe Burrow has had a single win against Cleveland his whole time at Cincinnati. But I think he breaks that mold this year. Obviously, got that contract extension, $275 million. I believe it's $219 million guaranteed completely. Obviously, highest paid player in NFL history after that. Paying quarterbacks that much, it can hinder you in a couple years. Are you going to be able to afford a Jamar Chase and a T. Higgins and a Tyler Boyd and a Joe Mixon? Are you going to be able to afford all that in the future? I don't know. I mean, it proves that the Chiefs have proved that it could work paying a quarterback that much money. They identified their franchise quarterback. That's a must in this league always. You need that franchise guy. They have weapons. They've had weapons on offense, but they are more than willing to let some go. Tyreek Hill, for example. But they identified the Chiefs are doing it right. They're making a blueprint that I think the rest of the NFL is going to follow eventually. They identified their franchise guy. They have their coach. Andy Reid's a fantastic coach. They identified their best offensive weapon, someone that is just like a can't-lose situation, which is Travis Kelce. That's why they re-signed him and everything. But at the same time, you're not going to be able to afford other guys like a Tyreek Hill. I think that's the biggest thing that has helped them. But then again, the Chiefs proved me wrong last year. But then again, they had more talent on the defensive side. They're a much younger team now. But I think Joe Burrow, we're getting back to the game this week. I think Joe Burrow finally gets over the hump. I think that new contract, it's got him energetic. He's ready to finally beat Cleveland, overcome his demons. So I think Cincinnati takes Cleveland this week. Yeah. I'm going to take Cincinnati to beat Cleveland in Cleveland this week. All right, moving on. Jacksonville at Indianapolis. Jacksonville by a landslide, and I do not care what any of the, top-end sports broadcasters are saying. I know, and Colin Cowherd's a great. Stephen A. Smith at ESPN First Take, they're great. Some people have been suggesting that they're not showing everything. Indianapolis is not showing everything this, in the preseason with Anthony Richardson. Obviously, no Jonathan Taylor. That doesn't help their cause. I don't know how much you can really hide with this team. I seriously think that this is one of the worst teams in the NFL, and I don't think Anthony Richardson, he's raw. He has the highest upside to any of the quarterbacks drafted this past year, specifically just because he looks like a Lamar Jackson-esque player. Like, he looks like that. Is he refined as a passer? Hell no. So it all depends on him being able to throw the ball the rest of the year. We'll see. Trevor Lawrence, we know who he is. Largest comeback in playoff history against the Chargers last year in the wild card round. So, that was impressive. But I think Jacksonville is going to roll Indianapolis. I don't see this being competitive at all. I think Calvin Ridley, welcome back from suspension. Don't gamble, NFL players. It's not good for you. Obviously, we saw that with Calvin Ridley. But when he was on the field with Atlanta, he was a stud. And I think he's due for a big year in Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville walks into Indianapolis and ramrods them. I don't think it's going to be close at all. Okay, we're going to move on. One of my favorites to talk about, mainly involves one of the players that I really like to talk about. Mainly shit on, but it is what it is. Tampa Bay at Minnesota. Oh, sorry. Two players I really like to scrutinize a little bit. Oh, Baker Mayfield. The end of an era with Tom Brady in Tampa. It was fun while it lasted, but, it's weird. My childhood quarterbacks are all, they're all leaving. It's depressing. And the last one left from, like, my childhood growing up watching football is Aaron Rodgers. He's a head case, but we'll get into him later. But Tampa Bay at Minnesota. Minnesota is going to absolutely use and abuse the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm sorry, I don't think Tampa has much of a chance. Their defense, it's okay. Todd Bowles, defensive guy, but, in this league, you need an offensive guy, unless your name is Mike Tomlin, Bill Belichick, or Pete Carroll. More than likely, you're going to need an offensive guy at the helm of the team. But, Mike Evans, he's still great. He's had 1,000-yard He's had 1,000-yard season in every single season he's been in the league, which is kind of impressive. I can't think of any other wide receiver that has really done that, at least in recent memory. But, I think you have an issue when you're a team and your quarterback battle is down to Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask. Enough said. I really, I've always been not a Baker hater. Well, a lot of my friends will call me a hypocrite for that because I shit talk Baker a lot, but that was mainly just because he was with Cleveland and I'm a Steeler fan, so obviously I'm going to be a little biased, but I never thought Baker was a bad quarterback, but Cleveland surrounded him with a superstar level team, bringing in OBJ obviously that one year. He just didn't make it work. I don't know how, but he proved to us all that he's not a franchise guy anymore. Obviously he could change my mind this year with Tampa. More than likely that's not going to happen because of how weak Tampa's Tampa's team is, really. And then obviously you got Minnesota. Kirk Kirk Cousins, the man still at the helm. This is an important year for Kirk Cousins, honestly. It really is, because there are so many good quarterbacks coming out next year. You really think that Minnesota is going to wait around another year possibly to extend Kirk Cousins when you got Caleb Williams coming out, Michael Penix Jr. from Washington, Drake May from North Carolina. Even Shedeur Sanders, I believe his first name is Shedeur. Shedeur Sanders from Colorado looks like an NFL quarterback after beating TCU. You got other guys in college like Tyler Van Dyke from Miami comes to mind. Even though he had a down year last year, he's bouncing back this year. But he looks like an NFL quarterback. But there are plenty of good quality quarterbacks coming in. Bo Nix from Oregon. There's a lot of talent coming in at the quarterback position next year. Do you really think Minnesota's going to wait around for Kirk Cousins to finally get over the hump? Obviously, losing Dalvin Cook doesn't help. I still don't get that move coming off a Pro Bowl season, 1,000-yard season with Minnesota. Still don't get Minnesota's rationale for letting him go. but they drafted Jordan Addison out of USC, complete stud. So Minnesota's got an interesting wide receiving group. Justin Jefferson, arguably the best in the game. You got KJ Osborne from this will be his third year. He's always been a reliable target, and now you got the rookie Jordan Addison. So, Minnesota's they won all their close games last year, including the biggest comeback in NFL history in the regular season. I think it was against the Colts. Yeah, Colts choked it big time. I don't know how, but they did it. But as far as the game is concerned, I don't see any conceivable reason that Tampa Bay walks into Minnesota and beats the Vikings. I really don't. So I'll take the Minnesota Vikings. I think Tampa will be feisty, but I think that game ends up being a lot I think the final score shows a little bit closer than what that game actually is. I'll take Minnesota to beat Tampa. All right, next up. Tennessee Titans at the New Orleans Saints. Oh, God. This is a tough one for me. Tennessee's got no weapons at all. Malik Willis didn't work out at quarterback when he did get time to play. Ryan Tannehill, I don't know who he has to throw the ball to, honestly. Derrick Henry, up in age, injury history. Not much I can say. They're well coached by Mike Vrabel, but I don't know how well they're going to do. Saints, same deal. Can Michael Thomas return to form? Alvin Kamara suspended the first couple weeks. Derek Carr, welcome to the shit show, I guess. New Orleans, they haven't recovered. Famous Jameis Winston, that shit failed. Honestly, not really the Saints' fault. Winston tore his ACL. Not Winston's fault at all. He did good. He was 5-2 before he tore his ACL that one year. So I feel bad for the guy, but at the same time, the division is so weak. New Orleans, Atlanta, Carolina, and Tampa, that division is god awful. Probably the worst in football in recent memory. Obviously, the NFC East was a shit show a couple of years ago, but right now I believe it's the NFC South. Sorry. I think New Orleans ends up taking the division just because I would say they have the best overall team, and that's not really saying much. I think they have the best overall team in the NFC South, so, I'm picking them. I already picked them to win the division this year, so we'll see how that goes, but I'll take the Saints to beat the Tennessee Titans in week 1. I don't know who Ryan Tannehill has to throw the ball to, if we're being honest. Not much, and Ryan Tannehill, middle of the pack, lower pack level quarterback. So let me take the New Orleans Saints to beat the Tennessee Titans. My game of the week, we're moving on to San Francisco at Pittsburgh. So everyone knows Pittsburgh is my team. I honestly think Pittsburgh is the most underrated team in this entire league. Their whole season, it all depends on Kenny Pickett. It's his show. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. It is up to Kenny Pickett. And how he does is how far Pittsburgh is able to go. Do I think he's the franchise guy? I do. I see that it factor, especially down the stretch of last season, win after win after win. I think Kenny Pickett is the guy, and I think he's due for a big year. Obviously George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, Calvin Austin, what was his name? Denzel Washington, Pat Freiermuth, Najee Harris, Warren, the running back. It's just Pittsburgh, I wouldn't say they have a lot of A spots at the wide receiver group, running back group, just the skill positions in general. I don't think they have a lot of A's, but they are highly underrated. That's my honest opinion about it. Obviously, Pittsburgh's defense, they speak for themselves. Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Joey Porter Jr. Obviously brought in Patrick Peterson. Old man Pat Pete. We'll see if he can still make some moves and be productive on defense. I think he can be. Obviously, Chris Boswell, a kicker. Pittsburgh, their defense, it's right up there with the Niners. Obviously, I think the Niners and Pittsburgh, you can You can debate between the two, but I think those are the two best defenses in football. I think this week it's going to be a low scoring game. I think it's going to be kind of ugly, but I'm going to take Pittsburgh to beat San Fran. I know San Fran is hyped up, but is Brock Purdy really that guy? Final pick in last year's draft. They have a fantastic team around him, obviously. Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, a great O-line. It all comes down to him. Brock Purdy has a lot to prove this year. Make sure it wasn't a fluke, because if he starts rattling off losses, there's going to be plenty of people in San Francisco that are going to be hammering that organization to start Sam Darnold, who might be the most talented backup in the league by now. People dog him because he was with the Jets. The Jets were a fucking dumpster fire when he got there, so, he didn't have much to work with. But, two great defenses. Obviously, the Niners just signed Nick Bosa back to an extension, which, fuck, of course. Of course, they had to do it right before our game with the game with Pittsburgh. But, yeah, maybe I am biased. I don't give a fuck. Pittsburgh is going to win. I'm taking Pittsburgh, probably a 27-24 game. It wouldn't surprise me if this was like a 17-10 game, 17-14 game, because I think these defenses are going to show up big time. Moving on. Arizona at Washington. The Caleb Williams sweepstakes has already started with Arizona. Cutting everyone. They cut Colt McCoy from quarterback, so they got some dude I never heard of, don't even remember his name, and Josh Dobbs. Used to play for Pittsburgh. He's okay. Not great. But I don't know if D-Hop is playing. Their defense is garbage. That entire organization has been garbage for, honestly, most of my life, too. Right up there with, like, Cleveland and Detroit. Teams that just were never good when I grew up watching football. Other than the 1 year, Arizona, 2 years Arizona was actually, legitimate. Was, back in 2008 when they won the NFC and ended up playing Pittsburgh in the Super Bowl. We all know how that ended. Too bad, Arizona fans. Too bad. Ring number 6. So they lost the Super Bowl with Kurt Warner at quarterback. But then the resurgence year, quite a few years later, I think it might have been about 7 years later, where they had the resurgence year with Carson Palmer. Yeah, they were a formidable team, except they ran into Cam Newton and the juggernaut that was the Carolina Panthers. I believe is 2016. They absolutely imploded in that game. So, but like a lot of teams, Arizona has been basically the ass end of the NFL for many years, basically as long as I've been alive. So, and they're tanking. They'll never admit it. The front office will never admit it. The owners will never admit it. But they're going to tank for Caleb Williams. And does Caleb Williams pull an Eli Manning or John Elway and just refuse to go there? Who knows? It's not a notoriously well-run organization. And there's a lot of people who have been chirping. It's funny. Cliff Kingsbury's on USC's roster. USC's coaching staff. You don't think he's mentioned something about, Arizona? You don't think Caleb Williams supposed to be the number 1 overall pick this upcoming year? You don't think that they chit-chat a little bit, just in passing maybe too? Who knows? But Cliff Kingsbury, I don't think he was a great NFL head coach at all. I mean, he had a losing record at Texas Tech, for God's sake, but that's why I don't get paid the big bucks to hire NFL personnel. I would love to run an NFL franchise one day, because I feel like a lot of fans would love to, because we think we know what football is. We think we know how it should be. We think we know how to build a roster, but, I think I can for sure. Couldn't do any worse than Arizona's doing right now in their organization. So Arizona at Washington. Sam Howell, it's your team now. Stout they got a good defense, not tremendous, but let's see if Chase Young can stay healthy. They got some good pieces. I think Washington takes this. I don't want to say convincingly, but I'm leaning that way just because Arizona is a complete fucking tire fire. So, yeah, give me Washington to beat Arizona. It probably isn't even close. Washington to beat Arizona. Moving on. CJ Stroud and Houston Texans at Baltimore and Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson and the Ravens are going to roll through Houston. CJ Stroud, I think he's a good quarterback. I thought he was better than Bryce Young in college. He's bigger, stronger, throws a better ball, in my opinion, than Bryce Young does. Not quite as athletic, but still, I think he was the most NFL-ready quarterback that year. Houston's going to be awful. They're going to be garbage. Nobody really on defense of note. Yeah, Houston, I think they're in for a long year. Houston Texans fans, it's going to be a rough year. Baltimore, I think they have a resurgence year. Obviously, injuries is their biggest fucking weakness. Lamar Jackson's going to return the MVP form, I believe. I don't think he'll, knock on wood, he doesn't get injured because nobody likes people getting injured at all. I like seeing the top players, no matter what, play in their games. It's more entertaining, obviously. But Baltimore, I think they go into Houston. I think they beat them probably by 20. I really think Baltimore's just going to crush them. And Baltimore's going to have a bounce back year. Houston, you're going to be in the sweepstakes for Caleb Williams too, or whatever quarterback people decide to take number 1 overall next year. So we're going to move on. The good old rivalry, the oldest rivalry in the NFL, Green Bay Packers at Chicago Bears. I've never been so unsure about a game, I'll be honest. Jordan Love, Green Bay, you traded up to get him. It's been 2-3 years. The dude hasn't shown any wow factor in practice or preseason. He's a game manager. He's not a spectacular athlete. It's kind of funny. We have the unproven commodity of Bryce Young in Green Bay. And then on the flip side, we have the athletic, what if, maybe it pans out for Chicago finally, Justin Fields. I personally like Justin Fields a lot. I think he's a tremendous athlete, tremendous talent. I think he is a quality starting quarterback in the league. Obviously, he's got to clean up his passing game. He's got to become more accurate and more careful with throwing the football. But, he went on, he was talking to a reporter. So the reporter asked him, who the top 5 running quarterbacks of all time in the NFL were. Justin Fields put himself in that list. Now, he set himself last. I get having the self-confidence thing, but my guy, you are 5-20 as a starter. I believe it's 5-20. Yeah, you've lost significantly more than you have won. Now, granted, Chicago's fucking team sucks. He had no weapons. He was running for his life because that offensive line is a putrid piece of dog shit. It all depends. Chicago, they're supposed to finally have a great year. So, I'm going to take Chicago in this just because I am so unsure of what Jordan Love actually is as a quarterback. Whereas Justin Fields, I know what he is. I know what he's good at. I know what his downsides are. But the biggest thing going forward for Green Bay is they went from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers, a generational talent, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, to another generational talent and one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. That doesn't happen. So first year without Aaron Rodgers, we're going to see how it goes. I don't think Green Bay is going to be that good. I really don't. I don't think Jordan Love was worth trading up for. I think Jordan Love's a backup in this league. So, and then on the flip side, Chicago has not had a great quarterback ever in their history. Jim McMahon, when they won the Super Bowl back in the 80s, the 85 Bears, that team was obviously led by, Walter Payton, sweetness, God bless his soul, but he carried that offense really. And, the defense, the 85 Bears defense, you can make the argument it was the greatest defense to ever play. But who has Chicago had at quarterback of note that was top tier at all? Jay Cutler? He had a couple good years, 2 or 3 if I can recall, where he went to the NFC Championship against Green Bay that one year, but he got hurt. supposedly got hurt. So, I don't know. Jay Cutler was dog shit after that NFC Championship year. But Chicago was led by their defense mainly that year. And Devin Hester, obviously greatest returner of all time, returning punts and kicks. So, I'm going to take Chicago in this game this week just because I'm so unsure about Jordan Love. I really don't know what the hell he is as a quarterback, whereas we know what Justin Fields is. He's a hell of an athlete, decent thrower, got to improve on the accuracy, but, it depends on him and how that offensive line holds up. So we're going to move on. The Las Vegas Raiders at the Denver Broncos. Las Vegas, the shit show. No other way to describe that. Okay, so Raiders fans out there, you move on from Derek Carr. A lot of people have been hammering to get him out of town for years, but you replace Derek Carr with a more injury-prone and brittle, like paper mache version of Derek Carr and Jimmy Garoppolo. The hell you doing? Obviously, you got Devontae Adams still. Josh Jacobs probably isn't going to play just because he's so fucking unhappy there. I don't blame him. The Raiders have been a shit show for most of my life, too. Other than a couple good years with Derek Carr, they really haven't amounted to anything. So, at Denver, I'm one of the few people who believe that, at least out of my circle of friends, who agree that Russell Wilson's not washed. Nathaniel Hackett might have been one of the worst head coaching hires in NFL history. He's right up there with fucking Freddie Kitchens for Cleveland those years ago. I seriously don't get the slander. Coaching matters in the NFL a lot. We saw that with Jared Goff. People wanted to write him off after his rookie year, but then he got Sean McVay. Oh, look at that. He went to the Super Bowl. So, obviously, Russell Wilson, I don't think he's washed. I don't think you go from an MVP level quarterback to bottom 5 in the league in everything in just 1 year. I think a lot has to do with culture and coaching. And, his weapons aren't great. Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton. They got rid of Noah Fant. I know that. He's in Seattle now. But, I think Denver is primed for a bounce back year. Don't know how far they can go. They still need, I would say, one more draft. They got to get more skill position players, and they got to shore up the offensive line, in my opinion. But Sean Payton at head coach is definitely going to help. Definite upgrade over Nathaniel Hackett, for God's sake. But I'm going to take Denver. I don't know about convincingly, but I think they squeak out a win for sure in week 1. I just don't think the Raiders have any firepower at quarterback other than, obviously Jimmy G. I don't even know if he's playing, but obviously Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs, if he plays, that'll be good for the Raiders, but I don't see that happening. Give me Denver to win this game. Philadelphia at New England. I love this matchup because Bill Belichick's defense is always good. They want to dog on Mac Jones, but I don't think Mac Jones is a bad quarterback at all. I mean, what does he have to work with? What weapons does he have, if we're being honest? What quality? If there's one thing New England is allergic to, is drafting and developing skill position players. They cannot do it to save their life. They have Devontae Parker and Juju Smith-Schuster. The hell is that? That's not great. If Juju's your one, Pittsburgh showed, obviously. So we obviously saw that with Pittsburgh years ago when Juju was the one. Once we kicked AB out of fucking town. But, it didn't amount to much. I thought Juju, he was a 1A, B, like a 1A to number 2 receiver. He's good, but he's no number 1. He's not a Devontae Adams. He's not a Justin Jefferson. He's not a Jamar Chase. He's none of those guys. So honestly, I don't know what to make of New England. Their defense is going to be good. They have no firepower on offense. It's like a fucking BB gun. They have nobody that I can really think of that really sets them over the top. And I do feel bad for Mac Jones just because I think he is a good quarterback, but we don't know. I think New England's going to have an okay year, specifically just because the defense is good, but that offense is like a pellet gun. They got no firepower whatsoever. And then Philly, fresh off a Super Bowl loss, but I think they roll over New England. I think they walk into Foxborough, and I think they just beat them down. I think Jalen Hurts is primed for an MVP level year again. I still think he should have won it over Mahomes last year. Mahomes fanboys, shut your mouth. I get it. They won the Super Bowl. Whatever. But I think Philly rolls into New England, and I think they beat them down. All right, Miami Dolphins at Los Angeles Chargers. Oh, I'm gonna take the Dolphins because I really don't. What do we get from Brandon Staley as a head coach for the Chargers? I think I think this is a make or break year for Brandon Staley. He's got to get into the playoffs again and actually win the game. Blowing a 30-point lead in the playoffs last year in the wild card to Jacksonville when, it was, kind of poorly run. It wasn't that great of a team. I mean, you have Trevor Lawrence to thank for that, really. But, honestly, I think the Chargers are great. I think they have a stacked roster. I really do. Keenan Allen, Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler, a good O-line, a decent defense led by Joey Bosa and Derwin James. I think the Chargers are going to be a team to reckon with in the AFC, but I just don't see any way that they're going to beat Miami this week. Tua coming back with, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. I think Miami is due for a big win. And I think Miami's defense is going to be the reason that they propel them to a win. I think their defense is much better than the Chargers' defense for sure. So give me Miami to go into Los Angeles and win. The Los Angeles Rams at the Seattle Seahawks. I think Seattle's going to win this game, and I do not think it's going to be close at all. So Matthew Stafford, up in age. Cooper Kupp, not playing. Jalen Ramsey, gone. Aaron Donald. That's it. That's honestly all the Rams have. Their offensive line, garbage. Weapons, subpar. Defense, non-existent other than Aaron Donald. I think Los Angeles is going to be in the sweepstakes for Caleb Williams or Drake May or however many teams there are going to be. I think Los Angeles, they sacrificed everything for that Super Bowl win 2 years ago. Props to them. Matthew Stafford was what they needed to go get over the hump, I guess. But at the same time, I don't see the Rams doing anything this year. I think they're going to be the ass end of the NFL this year. They're going to be in the race with Arizona and I think who else? Tampa. I think they're going to be in the sweepstakes for one of those quarterbacks with Arizona, Tampa, and then obviously themselves. Seattle, can Geno Smith do it again? Resurgence year made me so happy to see Geno Smith actually do some good. He got dogged on for years. Got drafted to the Jets. Every quarterback that got drafted to the Jets has sucked. So, I didn't expect him to be this good. Obviously, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and now adding Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think Seattle is going to win that division again. Not again. I think they're just going to win the division this year. I think Geno Smith repeats. I think he has another great year. He's not the greatest quarterback in the world, but he is definitely someone I would take over a lot of other quarterbacks in this league. So give me Geno Smith and Seattle to beat down Los Angeles. I'm talking ramrod, not going to be fucking close at all. I think Seattle wins big. All right, and we're moving on to the final game for Sunday night. The Dallas Cowboys at New York Giants. If there's one thing I hate talking about more than the Cleveland Browns or the Baltimore Ravens, it's the Dallas Cowboys. You guys are the most delusional fan base in the fucking world. It's this year. This is our year. This is our year. I'm starting to sound like a Cleveland fan. This is the year. This is the year. How many this is the years is it going to be for you to realize Dak Prescott's not your guy? Literally. You guys haven't made a conference championship since before I was thought of. That's a long fucking time. I'm only 23. The fact is that you haven't made an NFC championship game in well over 23 years. That's pitiful. And you've had good teams over the past couple years. especially Dak's rookie year. That was honestly, in my opinion, that was your last good chance to get there. Looking back on it, if I knew everything that was going to happen forward, I wouldn't have signed Dak Prescott to a large ass contract like that. He's a B plus. He's a B plus quarterback. He's more athletic Kirk Cousins, in my opinion. I don't think Dak Prescott is the guy. They got great weapons. They got a good defense, but it's the Cowboys. And I'm going to quote Stephen A. Smith real quick. The Cowboys are an accident waiting to happen. They're going to screw something up, and I think it's Dak. I think Dak is just going to have I don't want to say a horrible season because he had a subpar season last year, but I think he does bounce back, but I do not think they win. They don't win the NFC East. They don't. They might even come in third because I just don't have faith in the Cowboys. I'll leave them at second in the NFC East, finishing behind the Eagles, but they're going to New York. Another quarterback I hate talking about, Daniel fucking Jones. Really? You gave this man all that money in the world? Are you shitting me? Like, I don't get the hype around Daniel Jones. Like, he's athletic? Yeah, somewhat. I think he's a more athletic Kirk Cousins. That's it. I think he's a more athletic Kirk Cousins. I mean, there's not much else to say about him. The dude doesn't deserve the contract he has. That's for fucking sure. This dude does not deserve that kind of money. And, I run out of words just to describe it. I can't stand Dallas mainly because of their fucking fan base is delusional. This is our year. This is our year. You've been saying that for 30 fucking years. When's it going to happen? Same with you, Cleveland fans. This is our year. This is our year. Yeah, I've been waiting for that year for, let's see. It's Friday, 5 o'clock, Friday the 8th. Yeah, I've been waiting for over almost 24 years. So, you guys can calm down too, But I think Dallas is going to walk into New York and beat them. Excuse me. I think Dallas is going to walk into New York and beat them. I know Saquon Barkley on New York. I think New York's got a good defense, not great, but, other than the offense, I think Daniel Jones is just going to hold this team back. I think the New York Giants realize after this year that they picked the wrong quarterback, they paid the wrong guy, and wouldn't surprise me if they took a step back this year. Brian Daboll is a good coach. I really do think he's the guy that should be leading them forward, but I don't see how well New York is going to do. At least in week 1. I could be wrong. I can be completely wrong on all of these picks. It's only week 1, but that's why I love the NFL. I love debating about it. But give me the Dallas Cowboys to walk into New York and beat them. Not convincingly. I'd say like a 24-21 game. Final matchup of week 1 in the NFL. Buffalo at New York. Buffalo, you got a lot. Like, this is the year. Like, you have to get over the hump this year. Otherwise, you're screwed for years on end. I think this is Buffalo's last chance to win a Super Bowl with this core. I really do. Obviously, Stephon Diggs is unhappy, but Josh Allen, man, I think he's one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league, but I definitely think I don't think he's really that close to Mahomes. But then again, that's up for debate. But I think this is Buffalo's last year to really contend for the Super Bowl. You got so many young quarterbacks in the division, like coming up. Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, etc. And who knows, Kenny Pickett could pan out. Obviously, Lamar Jackson, Russell Wilson, Justin Herbert, Tua. It's just a gauntlet in the AFC. AFC has so many good teams, and, the NFC is kind of, it's meh. A lot of meh, especially since Aaron Rodgers has left. But speaking of Aaron Rodgers, I don't think this season is that big of a deal. This season is that big of a deal for them if they fail. I really don't. Did we criticize Brett Favre when he went to the Jets? No. We only remember the shit that happened in Green Bay. That's how he's going to be remembered. Rodgers is going to be remembered from his time in Green Bay. One Super Bowl. Of course, it was against Pittsburgh. I watched that game. It was horrible. Horrible experience. But the biggest thing for the Jets, that offensive line, is putrid. That offensive line is, honestly, it might be the worst in the league. It was right up there with the Lions level offensive line like 5 years ago, where their run game was non-existent. I don't think the Jets are going to have much of a run game at all, but they have amazing skill position players. Garrett Wilson is going to be a freak for years on end. Obviously, Breece Hall when he comes back from injury, Dalvin Cook, and the man himself, Aaron Rodgers. I think I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit for you Jets fans who think that they're going to the AFC Championship and possibly going to the Super Bowl. They're not. I'm sorry. They got a great defense. They really do. Sauce Gardner, Quinnen Williams, those guys are studs. But that offensive line is just so putrid, dog shit. Like, I really don't see any conceivable way that they're going to be able to go through the gauntlet of the AFC. I don't even think they're going to win their own division or get out of their own division. If you think about it, I'm taking Miami to beat Buffalo in both games. I think Miami wins the division for sure. I think it's going to be a tough division in general. Miami, Buffalo, New England, they're always going to play the Jets tough. But honestly, in this game, I'm taking Buffalo just because I'm so unsure about that offensive line for the Jets. And I know Buffalo has a good pass rush, so I'm going to go with Buffalo to finish it off. And yeah, New York Jets fans, you got to pump the brakes a little bit. They're not going to the AFC Championship. I don't see any conceivable way they can. It's just a gauntlet through the AFC. And we just went through all the week. Those are my picks. And, a little bit of rambling, I know. But those are all my picks for the week 1 in the NFL season. I'm going to do something real quick. I'm going to pick 4 teams from the AFC and the NFC that I think can make a run at the Super Bowl. I think it's way too early to predict who's going to go to the Super Bowl and who's going to win the Super Bowl, but I'll pick 4 teams from the AFC and 4 teams from the NFC that I think can make legitimate runs at the Super Bowl. So I'm going to start with the AFC. Kansas City Chiefs, specifically just because of Pat Mahomes and Andy Reid. Enough said. They've hosted 5 straight AFC Championship games for a reason, so yeah, does the wide receiver core concern me and Chris Jones not being there concern me? Yes, but as long as you got Pat Mahomes and Andy Reid, you're okay. So Kansas City, I'm also going to take Jacksonville because Trevor Lawrence is due for a big year. Doug Peterson has done a fantastic job there. The addition of Calvin Ridley and among other weapons, shoring up the offensive line and okay defense. I think Jacksonville is going to be a team to reckon with sooner rather than later. Cincinnati, of course, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Enough said. Miami, I think Miami, obviously, an upgraded defense. Tua, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill. I think they make another step forward this year. I think they're going to be a team to reckon with. And honestly, I'm going to go Pittsburgh. I think they're still the most underrated team in this entire league. Great skill position players. It just all depends on Kenny Pickett, and I think Kenny Pickett makes it that year. I think he makes it this year. Makes it over the hump. Chargers, I'm not sold on. Sorry, Brandon Staley's not that good of a head coach. I don't think he is. Clock management, non-existent. This dude does not make halftime adjustments. So I'm going to hold off on voting the Chargers in. All right, so I'm going to take from the NFC. God, this is obviously the Eagles because of Jalen Hurts. I think he's the best quarterback in the NFC by far. I'm going to take Philadelphia. I'll take Detroit. After week 1, that offensive line, those weapons, Jared Goff, the defense might need a little work, but I seriously think the Detroit Lions are the most dark horse team to make a run at the Super Bowl. Do I think they'll go to the Super Bowl? No. I think it's too early to tell, but I think they can definitely make a run at it. San Francisco, 100%. Obviously, depends on Brock Purdy. The defense is great. The weapons are great. The head coach is great. The organization's great. San Francisco will be a team to reckon with for sure in the NFC. I'm going to do something a little bit new. I'm going to take Seattle. They're a young team, but they got depth. That's for sure. They're always going to have fresh legs out on the football field. So I'm going to take Seattle specifically because Pete Carroll's, I think he's a great coach. I think he's one of the best in the league, especially being an old defensive head coach. But has a high-powered offense. So I'm going to take Seattle. And then my final one who can maybe make a run. Oh, God. It's like picking your... This is like picking shit. God, the NFC is so wild. You know, I'm going to take the most boom or bust team in the league. I think I'll take Chicago, who specifically on the upside of them upgrading his weapons, the defense has always been good in Chicago. It all depends on the offensive line, of course, and Justin Fields' development. But obviously, I'm making the prediction that Justin Fields will excel in this offense, and I think that he's due for a big year. So I'm leaning into that perspective. So if everything went well for Chicago, I think that they could make a run at the Super Bowl. And I'm trying to think if there's another NFC team I can really see. You know what? I'm gonna do it to satisfy all those clowns. I'll pick Dallas just because Dallas has a great team. Like on paper, they really do. I just don't trust Dak Prescott, and I don't trust Coach Mike McCarthy, but I'll put Dallas in the mix to make a run at the Super Bowl just because the NFC is so weak, and the only other team that really I think honestly that Dallas is the third best team in the NFC now that I look at it. I would only put Philadelphia and San Francisco up on them, so we'll see how it goes. I'd like to thank you all for tuning in this week on The Lake Show. Make sure to like and subscribe. Best of luck to all your teams except Cleveland and Dallas because they stink. They're gonna suck all year. I'm your host, Dominic Lako. God bless.